Let me go, let me say everything is not okay. Can't recognize you anymore. Nothing's like it was before. Oh, 'cause I can understand you, darling. Feels like I never be in love. If you could only understand me and show me that you want my love. We keep running from the pain. Don't wanna stay this way, stay this way. Are we still the same? Nobody gets to say. Speak to me, baby. Keep running from the pain. Don't wanna stay this way, stay this way. Are we still the same? Nobody gets to say. Speak to me, baby. I really hate to see the look that's written all over your face. Yeah.
This is the mission of our faith, to teach the fragile art of hospitality, to revere both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to witness to all that we must hold the whole world in our hands. Hello and welcome to Community Unitarian Universalist Church of Plano. We are online and my name is Jeanette Bailey. I am one of the worship associates here at the church. At Community UU, we work for justice, nourish spirits, and transform lives. Today's service is entitled Kiss the Ground in honor of Earth Day 2021. It is a time of deep concern for the planet. How can we respond to the realities of climate injustice, to actions that exploit and damage the natural systems of the earth? Our guest speaker and musician, Kiya Heartwood, has crafted a service that explores the reasons that we have to be hopeful. Kiya Heartwood holds a Master's of Divinity from the Star King School for the Ministry and is a UU ministerial candidate. Kiya has a long career as a musician, speaker, and creator of good in the world. She is based in Austin, Texas, where she also serves as the artistic director for the People's Orchestra of Austin. Please get comfortable and enjoy the music and the message for today. Our time is short here on the earth. Around us swirl immensities of time and space, a universe infinite in all directions. How small our hopes and cares seem amid the panorama of creation. Yet we are not separate from the cosmos, but have evolved and grown out of it. Like the leaves of a tree or the waves upon a sea. And our thoughts are its thoughts. Our lives a manifestation of never-ending vitality. Our spirits a microcosm of the beauty and creativity of the whole. Fill us then with reverence and compassion for all who are our kin. Cloud and sun, sibling and cousin, the multitude of beings who share this improbable and never to be repeated moment. All expressions, like ourselves, of the mind at large, the spirit at play, the dynamism at work, in whom we live and move, and whom we will never know. As the first hint of green begins to peek through the barren ground, as that little sprig grows into a healthy stem, as that stem grows into a stalk and forms a bud, and as that bud slowly opens with each new day to form a yellow daffodil, let us be like that first hint of green, renewed by the warmth of the sun's rays, and ready to emerge with a new energy, ready to face the day. We light this chalice to bring a glimmer of that warmth into our space. Unitarian Universalism is a covenantal denomination. We hold that we do not have to believe alike in order to love alike. In this and every UU community, there is a diversity of personal creeds, but there is one covenant for our church, and each time we gather, we recite it again. Please join with me now. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another.
The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, 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 return. The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, 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 return. The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, 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 return. The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, 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 return. The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, 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 return. The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, 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 return. The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, 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 return. The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, 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 return. The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, return, return. The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, 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 return. The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, return, return. The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, return, return. The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, return, return. The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, return, return. The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, return, the earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, return, the earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, the earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, the earth, the
For Keeps by Joy Harjo. Sun makes the day new. Tiny green plants emerge from earth. Birds are singing the sky into place. There is nowhere else I want to be but here. I lean into the rhythm of your heart to see where it will take us. We gallop into a warm southern wind. I link my legs to yours and we ride together toward the ancient encampment of our relatives. Where have you been? They ask. And what has taken you so long? That night, after eating, singing, and dancing, we lay together under the stars. We know ourselves to be part of mystery. It is unspeakable. It is everlasting. It is for keeps.
The mystic Rumi wrote, "There are 1,000 ways to kneel and kiss the ground. There are 1,000 ways to go home again." And I'm hoping that while we're talking about climate change this morning, and we're talking about soil and the difference between soil and dirt, I still want it to be a positive message because there are things we can do, and they're really simple things just by listening to nature. Soil scientist Asmaret Asfal Burhe talks about the 6 feet of soil that's the skin of the earth. And she says we have to stop treating it like dirt. We've lost up to 40% of our topsoil over the last 150 years. Half of the carbon dioxide that happens in the world is taken up, sequestered by the land and sea, natural ecosystems. Even now, even today, 50% of everything that happens on the planet is being assisted by the natural processes. And they will continue as long as we don't keep deforesting, cutting down the rainforest,
eroding our own topsoil, all the things that we're doing. As we put more concrete down, that heats up the planet. The plants can't do their thing. The plants take care of us if we take care of them, and we haven't been taking care of them. Think of it like this: soil security is food security. The more we take care of the soil biology of the soil, the more likely we will have restorative and better future for our children, and that there will be enough food for the people on the earth and all the beings. And we want as much diversity as possible. We want as much soil covered as possible. Right now, there's about 3 pounds of pesticides being sprayed for every human on the planet. And all those sprays kill the soil microbes that make our soil alive. It's that simple. We have to stop it. Agriculture is responsible for 1/4 of all the carbon emissions. Think about that. Just changing the way that we farm could save the world. Fritz Haber was a German scientist who's basically responsible for chemical warfare and pesticides and the gas that killed people in the Holocaust. So, not necessarily the best resume to have in the world. And that he is pretty much the father of post-World War II agribusiness, the Green Revolution. And the Green Revolution's still going on. In India, Monsanto has one major enemy, and that's Dr. Vahana Shiva. And she is basically the seed saver of India and is trying to keep all the indigenous farmers who have saved seed for their particular places and all that seed diversity, all those farmers in India, trying to get them to keep saving seeds and to keep investing in their traditional and very sustainable regenerative agricultural practice, and not go onto a money-based hybrid seeds and pesticides regimen. How did I get interested in this? Well, I got interested in this back in the 1990s when, remember the Biosphere Project, when they went to Oracle, Arizona, and they built this place that was 3 acres large, and they put 8 people in there for 2 years, and they were gonna like have a closed system of the earth, the biosphere 1 being the earth. Well, it didn't work. They had to add oxygen to it, because here's what I got out of it. All these brilliant scientists, all these amazing people, and they still don't know how the earth works. How the earth stays alive when all the other planets seem dead. And the main thing that makes our planet so unique, the 6 feet or so of soil that surrounds the earth like a skin. In our lifetimes, we've seen lots of things. The American way is to assume it's all going to be okay somehow. And we don't really like to talk about climate change, and we don't really like to talk about that we could have actually made mistakes. You could just take the Dust Bowl. I don't feel like we get much education about the Dust Bowl, but Dust Bowl is a really great example of us losing an incredible amount of topsoil from the prairie areas of the United States because we were plowing incorrectly. And that plowing let about 1/3 of the topsoil disappear. And people in New York City were having dust storms. So it was pretty intense, right? The scientists say that we have about 60 years to get this figured out before having so much desertification, loss of topsoil, that it starts impacting our ability to grow our food. Living soil is the key. The other thing that I found kind of surprising as I've been doing the research was to find out that soil is actually sequestering carbon. I know that trees really help and the green things really help, and without them, we don't have any oxygen to breathe. But the soil actually holds a lot of carbon In fact, more than the atmosphere and all the plants combined is being sequestered in the soil. And as we destroy our environment and lose our topsoil through erosion or through exposing it, we're losing our ability to sequester carbon in the soil. And without carbon in the soil, it's in the air. And then it starts messing with our oxygen, and we become like the biosphere too, where we just can't breathe. Let's talk about soil and dirt. Soil is sacred. The earth is sacred. Life is sacred. We are all made up of the same stuff. Our DNA is just not that different from a fruit fly's or anything else, a tree, a grass, a microbe. In fact, our bodies are mostly microbes. Check this stuff out. I didn't make it up. What I find fascinating is that ever since World War II, when Franz Herbert actually invented it in the First World War, the German scientist started inventing the ability to make pesticides and nerve gases. And he's the same guy who's credited with being the father of pesticides, but he's also the father of the gas that killed people in the Holocaust. The American scientists were so excited about his research after World War II, and they tried to turn things that were being created for military purposes into agricultural purposes. And it worked for just a second. We had a couple of harvests where, they could have a monoculture, so we just had a field full of corn, and you sprayed that corn and killed all the bugs and the grasshoppers that were eating it, and suddenly you had a great harvest. And they thought this was going to feed the world. Well, what's true is that the more that they spray, the deader the dirt becomes. Because without the microbes in the soil, without the nematodes, without the fungi and the network of fungi in the earth, our plants have to have inputs. They have to have nitrogen added or potassium added, or you get the drift. But if the soil is living and all the elements of the soil are there, the soil food web that Dr. Elaine Ingram calls, if all those things are in the soil, you don't have to spray. It's sustainable. And the microbes are getting enough oxygen, and they are doing their thing, and they're bringing up from the rocks beneath the soil the nutrients that the plants need. And the soil can be regenerated, and not just sustainable, because we have to sustain all the carbon that's gone in the atmosphere from the last 200 years. But we also have to take care of what's happening now. And there are actually some really easy fixes if we start emulating the earth. So I know this seems a little thick, but here's the basic layout. The earth has a soil web that keeps the soil alive, like it is in the forest. And we don't have to go in and add nitrogen to the forest. The forest takes care of itself through all the mulch and all the dead plants and all the microbes and fungi breaking the stuff down, and the earthworms and the nematodes and all the magical things that are happening in the soil. The soil can regenerate itself and take care of it, take care of us. And if we eat the plants that are raised in that soil, we are healthier. The system works. The problem is, I believe that we spent at least 2,000 years kind of denigrating the earth and denigrating the idea that God or the universe made it in the way it's supposed to be. We're supposed to concentrate on heaven and not on the earth. And so our scientists have not even learned how to build a biosphere. What can we do? Well, there are a lot of people doing work right now, figuring out how to save it. And I'm going to put a list of books that might be interesting to some of you about this. But there's permaculture and there's regenerative agriculture, where they don't expose the soil through plowing, where you put the plants in a cover crop and they are raised, and the cover crops are things like vetch and clover that put nitrogen back in the soil, and they don't let erosion happen. Really, we've lost a third of our topsoil since 1970. Every civilization that's made its life based on monoculture, where they grow one crop at a time, has disappeared off the face of the earth. From Greece and Rome and Egypt to the Aztecs, this is true. So the more that we can become a regenerative culture, where we have a lot of diversity in the soil and in the plants that we plant. In permaculture, you plant a bunch of plants together so that it confuses the pests, and it confuses the needs of the soil are met. So you have a nitrogen fixing plant next to one that needs a lot of nitrogen. Like, I'm sure you've heard of the Three Sisters situation, where they had corn and squash and beans. And the beans are legumes, and they put the nitrogen back in the soil. And the squash is keeping the weeds from coming up because it's got these big giant leaves, and it grows up the corn stalks. And that's a very Native American way of doing things. And they were pretty sustainable. A lot of indigenous people, the people in India, the people in China, for thousands of years were sustainable. They took care of the same piece of dirt. They didn't just move west when they wore out their farms like a lot of the American settlers did. But the thing that's important to know is that a lot of carbon is sequestered for thousands and thousands of years in the polar ice caps. And if they melt, they're going to let that carbon go. And when that carbon gets let go, the Earth heats up. And for every 5 degrees, we're going to have massive deserts happen. We're going to have a lack of soil for making food. And this could be a disaster. I don't believe it's going to happen because I think there's too many smart people and that they'll figure out a way to explain it. But what I want to give you all today is just some basic ideas. 1, we need all the soil beasties to stay alive. They cannot stay alive if you spray. If you spray Roundup in your garden, you're spraying stuff that came from that German scientist long ago, and basically it kills all the soil microbes. So that soil becomes dirt and becomes dead and can't regenerate itself. We need all the beasties. Dr. Elaine Ingram has a lot of work on this. You can watch her TED Talk. She's amazing. She has a PhD in soil science. She's an agroecologist. She's been doing this work for 40 years. And she explains it pretty simply how the soil food web works. I'm going to show you her diagram here. You need all these elements. She suggests you get a microscope, and that instead of doing a soil test, you just look in the microscope and make sure all the elements of the soil are there. Well, so how do you do that in a practical sense? You compost. How do you make compost? Well, basically, you put a little dirt that's alive, and you layer green stuff, dead green stuff, and brown stuff on top of each other. And it heats up and it breaks down, and the microbes start doing their work, and pretty soon whatever waste you had becomes soil, becomes compost. And adding compost is the best thing human beings can do to help the soil stay alive. Living soil holds more water, cleans more water. It also breaks down toxins. Fungi are really good at that, actually. There are mushrooms that can break down oil. There are mushrooms that can break down toxic anything. It's amazing. We have all the processes in nature to take care of us and for us to live a long time on this planet in perpetuity. We can keep this planet alive. and we could learn how it works. MLK Jr. said, "We may have come on separate ships, but we're all in the same boat now." That's so true. We're all in this boat called Earth, our blue boat home. I hope you'll give this a thought. And here's a list of books and movies that you might be interested in to get a little bit more information. Thank you.
I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. Rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. Rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. Rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. Rose will open.
This beloved community is a living thing, and we bring much to it by our presence, our love, our caring, our generosity, and our hard work. We may be fed by it in equal or even larger measure. In these uncertain times, we encourage you to give as you are able, so that the good works of our church may continue. We also remind you that the Share the Plate beneficiary for the month of April is our religious education program here at the church that serves children and youth. The money that you dedicate for Share the Plate will go to continue the programs that we have for the young people in our community. So how can you make your donation? You can donate by sending a check to the church building address, which you can find on the front page of our website. You may also donate online by visiting our website and clicking on the blue Donate Now button on the front page. On behalf of our community, your generosity is deeply appreciated. As our worship draws to a close, it is time for us to extinguish the chalice. Please recite these words with me now. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Remember the way of the wind and breathe and blow. Remember the way of the fire, sparkle and glitter and glow. Remember the way of the water and ebb and flow. Remember the way of the earth and grow. Go in peace.